Hi everyone, Kareen Erbe here with Broken Ground, and today I want to talk to you about 5 great berries to grow in cold climates. So though an annual garden is really great to have in terms of providing a lot of fresh vegetables for you and your family, if you do have the space, I highly recommend that you put in some berries, and even if you have more space, fruit trees. And the reason for this is that you plant these shrubs once and then they provide food for you year after year without a lot of your input. So whereas in an annual garden you're constantly seeding and planting and weeding and maintaining, berry bushes are great and need very little maintenance. And unlike fruit trees, which take usually 4 to 5 to 7 years to produce fruit, berry bushes are typically producing within 2 years, definitely within 3 years. So you get a yield that much quicker. Another reason is because they are super prolific. So you get a lot of berries off of one shrub. So I highly recommend it if you have the space in your yard and you feel like you don't have enough space for fruit trees because they take up a lot of extra sun space in your yard. Definitely consider berry bushes as another option. So let me get into the 5 berries that I would recommend you grow in cold climates. So the first berry is the raspberry, of course. Who doesn't want raspberries in their garden? And the thing to realize about raspberries is they are both super prolific, but they're also a little bit invasive. So I'd recommend that if you want to grow them against an edge of your yard because they will spread and you'll constantly be battling them growing, say, into another area where you might not want them. So if you have a fence line, grow them around the back fence line area, or even if you have an area where it's close to concrete or a sidewalk, that's a good place because it will naturally stop those raspberries. Also consider if you have neighbors that if you do grow them along a fence line, you might want to ask whether they're okay with having raspberries in a few years. It's a good problem to have, in my opinion, but just something to check. So find a place where you don't mind, find a place in your yard where you don't mind raspberries spreading, but it's well worth it. And if you think about, again, I'm oftentimes encouraging people, if they have limited space in their yard, grow things that cost a lot of money in the grocery stores. And a pint of raspberries certainly goes for, $5 or $6 a pint. So growing your own raspberries is a great way to go. Not to mention the fact that they're a great thing for kids to harvest. So that's my first recommendation for a berry. My second recommendation are currants. So there are both red and black currants. The black currants, I don't find them to be as tasty as in berries that you could just kind of pluck off of the vine and eat them as you're kind of wandering through your food forest. But red currants definitely, though they're tart, I love them. They're really great. And again, it's another shrub that is super prolific. The one issue with red currants is that they seem to be susceptible to the currant blister aphid, is what it's called. And so this creates kind of this bubbly, there are aphids on the back of the leaves of the currant, and it creates kind of a bubbly leaf. So though they're susceptible to it, they don't seem to decrease in productivity. So it doesn't seem to hit the black currants, just the red currants, at least in my food forest, but just something to keep in mind. And in terms of height and spread of currants, they're typically 3 to 5 feet in spread and in height. So again, just something to keep in mind if you're gonna grow multiples, which I would recommend. I usually go in multiples of 3, then just make sure you have enough space between the plants. So the third recommendation for a berry to grow are gooseberries. So I love gooseberries, and it seems like when I take people through the food forest, they respond the most to gooseberries. They are very, very productive, and my gooseberries started producing probably in the second year after we planted them. Again, they typically have a height and spread of 3 to 5 feet. The one drawback of gooseberries is that they are thorny. So they have some pretty vicious thorns on them. So if you do have kids, might not be the best berry to recommend in terms of something that you'd want to harvest with them. But typically I just put on some gloves and I'm able to harvest, and I still have so many. I've been picking for a while and I still have so many on my shrubs. And this is after we got a June 12th frost where I lost some of them. Some of them froze because it went down to something ridiculous like 26 degrees Fahrenheit here. But so I lost some of them in that frost, but they still produced an enormous amount this year. So gooseberries, highly recommend, and they are just a really nice looking shrub as well, in my opinion. And then the fourth recommendation are jostaberries. So jostaberries are what are in back of me right here. I have 4 in my food forest, and what jostaberries are a cross between a currant and a gooseberry. So the great thing about them is that they're maybe just a little bit smaller than a gooseberry, but the shrub doesn't have thorns on it. And they do grow to be a little bit bigger, so up to 6 feet tall. So they are great, a great addition to any food forest, and again, very productive in a food forest and aren't susceptible. Doesn't seem like mine have been susceptible to any types of disease. So then the final berry that I recommend you grow is of course the strawberry. So I grow 2 different kinds of strawberries. I grow kind of the June bearing strawberries in our food forest, but then I also grow alpine strawberries. And the great thing about growing both is that you have the June bearing strawberries, so you have those in June, and then alpine strawberries produce later. So I'm still eating some right now, and it's 3rd week in August. So that kind of extends your yield of strawberries over the course of the summer. And the great thing about alpine strawberries is that they are shade tolerant as well, hence the alpine nature. You find them in kind of an alpine forest environment. They are super small, but they are super delicious. There's just sugar, a bunch of sugar packed into a very little berry. And so I grow both yellow alpine strawberries and red alpine strawberries, and the yellow ones have been really productive this year. So again, those are my 5 recommendations. Raspberries, currants, gooseberries, jostaberries, and strawberries. Most of those are actually somewhat shade tolerant. So if you do have an area where you do get partial shade, they will grow in partial shade. Just know that they will be slightly less productive in the shade as opposed to if you were to grow them in the full sun. So let me know if you have any questions. Of course, I would check with your local nurseries to see what specific varieties do well, but all of those berries seem to be hardy for this zone 4 growing climate. Very prolific. I am not going to be able to harvest all of the berries, so the rest will be left for the birds. And they're berries that you can use fresh. You can eat fresh as you're wandering and grazing through your garden. There are things that you can use to make jams or jellies or berry crisps. So they're really great options for cold climates. So do let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you're having a great rest of the summer.